Hi everybody, I'm Gary Jackson from Multinational Canine. This is the first of a series of videos we'll be doing answering the questions to some of our YouTube subscribers, and this week we got a question from a chap from Melbourne, Australia. His name is Daniel Mannix, and he has a few questions to ask, and we're just going to try and cover that today. What he asks is that he was under the impression that with an explosive detection dog, you don't want the dog to indicate on small residue target odor, but to use it to find the source, okay? And if you reward the dog for hitting residue odor, while the care around contamination prevention. He also says for applications where you want the dog to ignore small amounts of target odor, wouldn't it be fine to be more careless when setting up and not rewarding on small amounts, treating them like non-target odor? So, and they're great questions, they really are. Firstly, let's have a look at a couple of things where we can actually look at the different applications for the explosive detection dogs. In some areas, you're working an explosive detection dog around totally scent saturated areas, and we just have to look at the Middle East, where you've got explosive dogs working out in the field there, and there's explosive contamination and saturation absolutely everywhere. So a dog locating bits of residue and indicating would be absolutely useless in that environment. So instead, in the training, you should train the dog in scent-saturated areas. And some of the things that you can actually do there is by using an atomizer to spray odor all over the entire search area. That's one thing you can do, and just make sure the whole place is completely contaminated, and condition the dog to look for large amounts of target odor in that area. And soon you'll have a dog that can work through scent-saturated areas and only find the large amounts of explosives and not indicate on residue odor. Now, with the other ones that, which is very similar to this, is, for example, the cane-toed detection dogs. Now, when they're looking at shipping containers which go into some of the cane-toed free islands around Australia, if the cane-toed dog was going to indicate on any form of cane-toed odor, the dog would be indicating at practically every shipping container. So in this case here, what you do is that you train the dog in scent-saturated areas to find the live cane-toed, not the cane-toed odor. You will also see this in airports, where you want the dogs to be able to find fruit on people that are coming in, but not where the fruit's been. If you did it that way, then the dog will be indicating on 9 out of 10 people. So that's the application on that side there, which can work. But effectively, when you direct the dog off residue odor, you're teaching the dog not to indicate on it. So if the dog does sit on the residue odor, does an indication, you say find, guide the dog off that residue odor, and continue the search. So soon the dog will start to realise that he doesn't get rewarded for locating target odour, which is residue, but only rewarded when he hits a large amount. Now, we'll have a look at a couple of other ways where you want the dog to indicate on residue odour. When we'll look again at the explosive detection dog. When we finished off an explosive detection dog in Sydney, what we found in the first operational search, the dog indicated on a box which was part of the stage setup for a concert that was coming up that night. Now, when one of the stage hands was brought over to say, hey, what's in this box there, it was empty, but what he did say, they held explosive charges for confetti throwers, which was used in another show they did several months before. So the dog indicated on that. So in cases like corporate explosive detection, it is good to make sure the dog hits on any small amount of residue odour. Other ones which you probably remember from this channel, Migaloo, the world's only bioarchaeology detection dog. What we did with Migaloo is that we purposely trained her on very small amounts of residue odour. And the reason for this is that if we just trained her on bone material, then I know that this find that she had down in South Australia, this 600-year-old skeleton 2 meters deep, she would have walked straight over the top of it, okay? So what we did, we started touching the bud to the bone and then rubbing it on a rock or on a log, and then rewarded her much the same same as it was a target odour, a large amount, and she got the same reward for that. So then the dog was under no mistake that, I found the smallest amount, bang, sat straight away and expected the reward. So with doing that, that's what enabled us for the dog to be able to go and find such minute amounts of odour, which are so old in age and 2 metres deep. So each of the ways you do it, whether you work the dog on saturation or on residue odour, they all have purposes. Okay, now you can get a bit reckless with contamination odour if you're going to be training a dog in a contaminated area, but you have to be very, very precise with your contamination and residue odour if you're going to be training the dog to indicate on residue odour. So when you set up a search, you may have a large target odour in the search area, but you'll be precise to know that you've transferred a bit of residue odour on certain points, so that way when the dog walks through, the dog hits it, you can ensure the dog sits and reward the dog accordingly. Okay, now the other thing which is quite interesting too is that I teach the dog to be disobedient. Okay, now it sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but I get the target odour to override the my obedience on the dog. So in other words, I want that dog to ignore me and go, no, I've got target odour here. One of the big problems that a lot of trainers do, they do such an overkill on obedience that the obedience overrides the dog's target odour. So the dog goes up to the target odour, is just about to sit, the handler says fine, and the dog says okay, and just continues on walking. And then you wonder why the dog missed that odour. I want the dog to ignore me and go back there. So Daniel also asked a question that, do I reward the dog for going back to the same target odour like 2 or 3 times? And the answer to that is yes, you do that. Okay, a lot of people don't. They'll just say continue on. The reason I do that is because if you have a dog which goes up to residue odour and sits and you say fine, continue on, you're effectively teaching that dog to ignore residue odour. Now if a dog hits a target odour and sits, you say fine, he goes back there and hits it again, and you say fine and don't reward him, you're effectively teaching him to ignore that as well. Okay, now if you have a look on the video, there was Chance finds an undiagnosed cancer. The pod was supposed to be clear, it ended up having a cancer in there. Now, the dog went over and indicated, I directed the dog away and the dog argued with me. And Chance came back and said, no, it's here. And then I directed him over to another pod. He went over, had a sniff at it and says, no, not in there. He went straight back and then started hitting that odour again. Then he got frustrated, started barking, he started biting at it. So here's the dog arguing with me to say, no, it is in here. So this is why I teach the dog to be disobedient. And how we do this in the searches is that we'll have the dog go up, find the target odour and sit. We praise the dog for doing it. And then we'll say, okay, continue the search, find. The dog goes up to about 2 or 3 other pods, there's nothing there. And then you give him the show me command. So it's show me. And the dog goes back to it, good fella, and the dog's rewarded again. Do that about 2 or 3 times and you'll have the dog 100% clear and consistent that when there's a target odour, he's onto it, and when you try to guide him off that, he's going to argue with you and say, no, it's here. So there's going to be no doubt as a handler that that dog is on target odour. So there's just a couple of things, and I hope that's answered your questions. Any questions that anyone else has, please let us know. And I'll be able to address the questions here on the video responses. So Daniel, thanks very much. Fantastic questions. Good luck with all your detection training in good old Melbourne, Australia. Wish you all the best, and all the best from now. I'm Gary Jackson from Multinational Canine. Bye for now.